So, this review of Kenobi is coming out a little bit earlier today because I've got another video coming out later, and I honestly just need to vent. Episode 4 of Kenobi was just bad, and I mean really, really bad. Also, if I sound a little bit off, it's because I've had absolutely no sleep. I'm shattered, but I just need to talk about this goddamn episode. And the first thing I need to say is 30 minutes. This is the shortest episode of live-action Star Wars TV we've had. 30 minutes. This episode was so poorly paced that I legitimately could not believe what I was watching, knowing that professional writers, professional storytellers wrote this and thought, yeah, it worked. They were talking about how they wanted the Kenobi show to be more akin to something like Logan, a darker sort of character-driven drama, but with an episode like this, I just don't know how you can come out and say that. This episode completely forgoes any kind of drama or any kind of character development, and it just gives me a bad case of whiplash and eye strain from some of the really, really bad visual effects. Also, as always, there's spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. The episode starts with Obi-Wan in the Bacta tank, as many of us expected, and I really thought that what they were going to do was that they were going to give this episode to Obi-Wan so he could really delve into his trauma and delve into the traumatic experience that he just had, and him essentially learning to overcome that so he can go and save Leia and confront Vader again, but actually this time put up a fight. But this episode just forgoes any intricate personal character moments with Obi-Wan, and it just exchanges that for this really, really poorly edited kind of snapshot between him and Vader in the Bacta tank. And while I completely get what they were trying to do with that, it was so poorly executed, and for me it just achieved absolutely nothing. From the moment this episode started, you could just tell the pacing was really off. We're on a new planet, there's a bunch of new characters, and we spend like 5 minutes of Obi-Wan trying to convince this random dude to help him invade the Inquisitor's fortress. And this dude is going, no, I can't do that, it's too much of a risk. And then 5 minutes later, he just turns around and goes, actually no, I will help you because that's what I do. Why did we just waste 5 minutes of Obi-Wan trying to convince him to help him? I don't get it. It was that exact moment when I realised that something was wrong, and it really didn't get any better from there. It switches over to Reva interrogating Leia, and, you know, this was okay. The kid is a really good actor, and she plays young Leia really well, and she does in this episode too, but I felt like they could have done something much more interesting with Leia and Reva's dynamic, in which Reva was maybe trying to get into Leia's head, but in turn Leia was actually getting into hers, and this was stirring up feelings of Reva's tragic backstory of being taken by the Jedi and watching her friends die as a child and whatnot. But no, the longer it goes on, you realise it's just another drawn-out interrogation that doesn't really have any threat whatsoever, because we know that Obi-Wan's about to save her, and the show doesn't do anything to elevate the stakes. There is no point in this episode where you're actually afraid for Leia, or afraid of the consequences of her being captured, because it's literally just episode 2 repeated, but in the Inquisitor's fortress. Anyway, we switch back to this other planet, and they've miraculously figured out how to break into quite possibly the most fortified place in the galaxy just like that. There's no deliberation on how this is done, they're just going to do it, and as they're flying towards this planet, Obi-Wan and Tala have this conversation about how Obi-Wan needs to get over his past. And that's all we needed, Obi-Wan's back. That was the introspective, character-driven, personal moment that we needed for Obi-Wan to come to terms with his past and his trauma. A woman he's met for about 30 seconds has told him to get over it. You literally can't make this up. Meanwhile, Reva's trying to interrogate a 10-year-old child about the whereabouts of these secret spy cells across the galaxy, like a 10-year-old is going to know that, but Leia is refusing, so Reva decides to torture her instead. While that's happening, Obi-Wan and Tala manage to infiltrate this fortress with absolutely no struggle whatsoever, and it's a shame because I actually like Tala as a character. There's a small moment in this episode where she kind of just switches into her Imperial mindset, and I absolutely love that, but there just wasn't enough of it. Anyway, Obi-Wan's sneaking through this fortress to try and find Leia, and for some reason there's about 4 guards in the entire place and a bunch of droids that can't see anything unless it's directly in front of them, and he ends up finding a bunch of dead Jedi kind of frozen, and he realizes that the fortress is actually a tomb for them. Tala, on the other hand, is helping Obi-Wan navigate his way through the fortress on like a command console, but then Obi-Wan asks Tala to create a diversion so he can get into the torture chamber, so she essentially calls Reva, who for some reason completely stops the torture just as she's about to actually do the torturing, and then leaves to go and meet Tala, who tells her that she's a spy who's undercover for the Empire. While that is happening, Obi-Wan breaks Leia out of the torture chamber, and there's this cool little scene where it's just him using his lightsaber in the dark to essentially take out the guards in a stealthy fashion, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, Obi-Wan manages to break Leia out, but they're spotted by a seeker droid, and so this puts the entire fortress on high alert. And then we have this chase sequence where they're being chased by a bunch of stormtroopers, and it's here we get to see Obi-Wan get a bit of his flair back. He's doing all these fancy deflections. And you can see that Ewan McGregor's having a lot of fun. He definitely tries to embody the old Obi-Wan a bit here. But none of this has been really earned, because like I said 5 minutes ago, Obi-Wan barely knew how to use his lightsaber because he hadn't touched it in so long. But now all of a sudden it's like he's back to his old self. The pacing between episode 3 and episode 4 is honestly terrible. Another thing that I found really stupid about this episode was that about 10 minutes into the episode, I forgot to mention this, they show Obi-Wan trying to use the Force again, and he was really struggling to just pick up what looked like a piece of metal or something, and then all of a sudden by the end of the episode he has the capability to literally hold back the force of the ocean by stopping it from cracking some of the glass that got hit by a blaster. Interesting. Then they try to sneak Leia out by hiding her underneath a coat, and all of these other Inquisitors are just walking past him and they don't even notice. Like, for real, what is the point of these Inquisitors? They are the most useless villains I think I've ever seen in my life. However, Reva miraculously manages to appear to corner them just as they are about to escape. She notices that Leia's hidden under the coat. But don't worry, because the day is saved. A bunch of snow speeders come out of the blue and they start shooting up the fortress, and for some reason there's absolutely no defences whatsoever. They can literally just fly into the main hangar and just start shooting everyone. And I also have to add here that the effects were absolutely awful. I have been saying for the past couple of weeks that I thought the visuals of Kenobi were really good, but the speeders in this episode looked so bad in every single shot they were in. It honestly looked like they were using toys against a bit of green screen. Now, I don't know whether they did this to try and emulate the originals by using good old models, but the way they did it just didn't work because it looked so low budget. But anyway, Obi-Wan, Tala and Leia manage to get into one of these speeders and fly off, but not before Reva can attach a bomb to one of them and blow one of the rebels up. And then the next 5 minutes of the show are a big sad moment between the characters we met for about 30 seconds at the beginning of the show about how they had lost someone and how sad it was, like we were supposed to care. We don't even know what this person's name was, and for me this was just totally unearned and so pointless. However, there's also a little moment between Leia and Obi-Wan where Leia goes to hold Obi-Wan's hand, and in turn Obi-Wan holds her hand, and this moment was literally the only good thing about this whole episode. I've been saying it since the beginning of the show, but the best thing about it so far has been the dynamic between Leia and Obi-Wan. They are doing that really well, and in the 10 seconds that they have together in this episode, it is the best thing about it. Because they are really trying to build up this sweet bond between Obi-Wan and Leia, and every time the show gives some time to let that happen, I'm really enjoying it. Anyway, the show ends with Darth Vader raging at Reva because she failed. But don't worry, because Reva had a big plan all along. She snuck a tracking device on Leia's droid, and Vader was actually happy with that. And it's like the 3rd time in the show now that Reva's had a gotcha moment, and it's just becoming tedious at this point. Anyway, if you can't tell, I really didn't like this episode at all. I'm actually going to go as far as saying it's one of the worst pieces of Star Wars live action we've ever had. and I'm really just bitterly disappointed. Now, there's only 2 episodes left, and I personally don't see where the story can go from here. They've completely wasted the opportunity to have an introspective story of Obi-Wan coming to terms with everything that's happened, and I feel like these last 2 episodes are just going to be a goose chase across the galaxy for Darth Vader and Obi-Wan to have a fight, and for Reva to likely be killed by Darth Vader or the Grand Inquisitor by the end of it. Also, guys, did I mention that this episode was 30 minutes long? I've watched children's cartoons that are longer than this episode. Seriously, what the hell are Disney thinking with these pathetically short episodes that don't have any breathing room to tell any kind of serious story? It's beyond me. Now, I do apologise if this review came across as more of a sarcastic, angry rant, but like I've said, I've had absolutely no sleep. I'm just annoyed at this episode and I'm just venting at this point. But if you somehow managed to enjoy this review, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't, perhaps consider subscribing so you can join me for next week's review, which is likely just going to be another rant about how short the episode is and how poorly they are executing the story and the pacing. But I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.